You have a hidden superpower. And despite thinking for the longest time that it's actually a liability, it is really something that can propel you forward in your relationships and in your life in general. Today we're going to be diving into what that is, as well as some tips and strategies to help you manage conflict. And at the end of the episode, I am going to be giving you a full breakdown of all the key takeaways from the entire emotional fitness series that we've been doing over the last 5 weeks. This is going to be your easy takeaway kind of mental wellness toolkit that you can take things from whenever you need them. Okay, stay tuned.
Welcome to the Mindset Gym podcast, where we exercise your way of thinking to help unlock your hidden potential. I'm your host, Emily Irwin, a registered nurse and holistic nutritionist with a passion for all things health, fitness, and personal development. All right, let's get into it.
Hi guys, welcome back to the Mindset Gym podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. We are at the end of the emotional fitness series. We've come all the way to part 5. It feels like the entire month making this just kind of flew by. For anyone who's kind of stuck around and listened to every part of that, thank you. It was a lot of topics to cover all at once, and so it will be kind of nice to get back to our regular episodes next week and just, cover one thing per episode so there's not so much jumping around. But I was really excited to make this. It was kind of a really fun idea that I came up with, and so it's nice to actually see it coming to fruition. So thank you for anybody who's, put in the time to listen to all of those episodes and give your feedback on it, because it meant a lot to see it being well received. So the last part of the emotional fitness series that we're going to be doing today is kind of our advanced training section, and so I'm going to be covering 3 main things with you today. The first one is talking about using vulnerability as a superpower. After that, we're going to be diving into managing conflict. And the last part of this episode that I think is going to be really fun is I am going to be going over all 5 parts of the emotional fitness series. So everything we've covered in the last 5 episodes of this podcast, I'm going to be giving you a really quick breakdown of just some key takeaways, some of the most important points, some things that maybe came up more than once, things that were really helpful in terms of how you frame your mindset going forward, how you can, make small tweaks to behaviors or your way of thinking to improve your overall mental well-being. And so if you haven't watched all of those episodes, maybe you don't want to put in the time to watch all of those episodes, you could get all of the really main takeaways just from us going over this toolkit. So stick around for that, because that's going to be a really easy thing for you to take and put into practice going forward. So the first topic I'm going to get into is using vulnerability as a superpower. And I think vulnerability often gets kind of misconstrued with weakness or as a liability, because I think directly or indirectly, we all kind of learn lessons growing up about vulnerability. And there was a little bit of a narrative that I think a lot of us picked up along the way, whether it was intentional or not, that vulnerability is equated with weakness. And we may have grown up around people who, encourage you to keep your emotions to yourself, or maybe gave you some sort of negative reaction when you had an emotional outburst, because, as a kid, being vulnerable and trying to share your feelings is not always a very clean cut procedure. We don't really have those tools in place yet to regulate ourselves properly. And so that kind of sharing of emotions and vulnerability can be done in kind of bigger outbursts, and sometimes the negative reactions and the feedback that we get based on that behavior can create this kind of subconscious narrative in our head that us sharing our feelings and sharing what's going on with us mentally or being vulnerable about our experiences is a bad thing. And so over the years, I think we all kind of learned to keep a degree of that to ourselves. As a result of that, being vulnerable and sharing your emotions with other people can be a really difficult thing to do. It doesn't always feel like the right thing to do. It doesn't always feel like the safe thing to do. Sometimes it can trigger a lot of anxiety. I don't know if you've had this experience, but I know I have, where I've been in a conversation with someone and I've been vulnerable and I've shared something, very personal about myself or about how I'm feeling. And later on that night, I find myself, lying in bed, just, ruminating about it and feeling very anxious and feeling very exposed about the fact that I shared something so personal about myself. And so it can feel like you're stepping into unsafe territory being vulnerable by sharing all of these things that are so kind of close to your heart. because you are kind of like exposing the deepest parts of yourself and opening them up to criticism and taking a risk on how that other person is going to respond. I think the thing that we often miss is that vulnerability isn't a bad thing. Provided it is approached in the right way, it can actually be really, really helpful for fostering relationships, for innovating, for moving forward on projects, and for making us feel more seen and understood in our circle of people. Because I think if we all think about it, think about when other people have been vulnerable with you and they've shared something really personal in their life. I think we often find ourselves feeling much closer to a person when they share something really vulnerable about themselves. It feels like you understand them on a deeper level, and because of that, you feel more inclined to connect with them. You feel like the relationship you have with this person has kind of stepped into a new level. And I think for me personally, I find it to be a really positive thing when people are vulnerable with me, but I have a hard time translating that into feeling the same sense of positivity when I'm vulnerable with other people. And I think that's a very common experience. And so I have a quote here from Brené Brown that kind of nicely encompasses the experience of being vulnerable and putting yourself out there. And she says, vulnerability sounds like truth and feels like courage. Truth and courage aren't always comfortable, but they're never weakness. It is not a weakness for you to be vulnerable with other people. And so I'm going to go through some ways that you pulling back on your vulnerability and not being willing to show that to other people can show up in your day-to-day life, because it's not always not being willing to vent and spill your guts to other people. There are other ways that this kind of impacts our behavior. So the first thing is us hiding our mistakes. So if you've done something wrong and you've made a mistake, whether it's, at work or within a relationship dynamic, or maybe you've broken something at home, and instead of admitting to the mistake and seeking out help, we have this tendency to pretend everything's fine, pretend we have everything all together, and keep to ourselves the downfalls that we might be facing. It feels very vulnerable to open up about the mistakes we've made and to admit that we're not perfect. The next thing that we can do that kind of goes hand in hand with this is avoiding asking for help. And despite it being a really helpful tool and opening up a dialogue for you to learn from other people, I think a lot of us avoid asking questions because we don't want to be judged for looking like we don't know what we're doing. We don't want to ask a quote-unquote stupid question. So we avoid asking questions altogether, and we just pretend that everything's fine and, act like we've got it all figured out when sometimes that's not the case. And I remember this being something that I struggle with, still do, when I first started my nursing job, is there was a lot of things I didn't know. There was a lot of things I had questions about, and I really had to push myself out of my comfort zone to go to other people and ask questions and try to learn from them, because it made me feel very vulnerable. It made me feel very exposed. It kind of brought to the forefront that I didn't know the answer to these certain things or didn't know what I was doing in certain situations. And it was something that I really had to force myself to get a little bit more comfortable with, because that's how I get better. If I, don't ask these questions and I don't learn from other people, I don't improve. And so there's a lot of good that can come from you being willing to put yourself out there and learn from other people and have that dialogue and admit that you don't know the answer to everything, because nobody does. There is no shame in not knowing the answer to something. Nobody has all the answers figured out. And the last way that we can avoid being vulnerable is just by concealing our authentic selves. And so we don't share who we truly are at the core. Maybe we show up as somebody we're not. We say things that don't really feel true to us. We pretend we're interested in things that we're not really interested in. We change our tone of voice. We change the way that we talk. We do things that we think are going to make us more likable and are going to make us fit in more. And create the situation where you are in a group of people and you have these connections that don't feel genuine, and it feels like people don't really see you because you haven't given them the opportunity to. They don't really know who you are. These relationships don't give you that feeling of authenticity or that feeling of being seen because you've closed that door. You've shown up as somebody that you're not, and so the relationships that you have are built on this alternate identity that you've been presenting with. And that can leave you feeling really lonely, even if you do have a lot of people in your circle, because those people don't really know you. You haven't let them. And I think at face value, we think that doing these things is going to be better. It's going to be a better outcome if we pretend to be more likable, if we pretend that we have everything figured out, if we pretend that we know what we're doing all the time, even when we don't. but that's actually not the case. Studies show, at least in a leadership and performance context, that when all of the participants in the group feel psychologically safe, so in other words, they feel safe sharing their authentic selves, they feel safe being vulnerable and expressing when they don't know the answer, and having that kind of more genuine back and forth, being able to do that without fear of judgment or punishment, the entire group ends up performing better. There was a study that was done on team psychological safety, and it found a correlation between that sense of psychological safety and the team's learning, efficacy, and productivity. Being in a situation where you feel safe to really share how you're feeling and be open to the other person's feelings and have that true back and forth allows for more innovation, allows for everybody to take more steps forward because everybody is willing to admit what they don't know and everyone's willing to learn from each other. From a performance standpoint, if you're looking at this from, say, a work standpoint, let's say you're running a group for work who's trying to accomplish a project, it is better to create an environment where everybody feels safe sharing their authentic selves and having that really vulnerable back and forth, because no one's trying to pretend, no one's trying to cover up that they don't know things, no one's trying to pretend that they're somebody that they're not. Everybody can show up as their authentic selves and figure out the things that they need to do in order to get to the end goal, and they end up being much more successful when they can do that. And so this is where that kind of superpower element of it comes in, because this is something that you can use in order to perform better and in order to foster connection with other people. When you allow yourself to be seen, even if it's not perfect, you encourage other people to do the same. You create a space where it feels safe to do that. And then you get that really genuine, trusting back and forth relationship with other people. And so this can really be your superpower for fostering deeper connections and for moving the needle forward if there's certain projects you're trying to work on. Being willing to make that mindful shift to show up as your authentic self and fumble your way through it is going to create a much better dynamic. I have another quote from Brené Brown on this topic, and she also says, "Vulnerability is the birthplace of love, belonging, joy, courage, empathy, and creativity. If we want greater clarity on our purpose or a deeper and more meaningful spiritual lives, vulnerability is the path." In environments where people are willing to admit that they don't know the answer, or that they messed up, or that they're not perfect, this allows the space for new ideas to emerge. Research from Project Aristotle that was completed at Google found that psychological safety, so in other words, where vulnerability is safe, was the most important factor in high-performing teams. So what can we do? What are some steps that we can take in order to foster our own vulnerability and make this a practice that feels a little bit safer for us to turn on and utilize when it's beneficial to do so? Number one is start small, and I think this goes for a lot of mindset type behaviors, or any type of behavior change really, is start with really small steps. This could be showing up for a task imperfectly, or admitting that you don't know the answer to something when someone asks you, or maybe raising your hand in class and asking a question that you wouldn't normally ask, or asking someone for help when you would normally try and just push through and do it on your own. Or maybe it's during a conversation with someone, you take a minute and you truly share how you're feeling. Don't try and make it pretty, don't try and make it more digestible, just truly share what is going on. And it's gonna feel uncomfortable, it's gonna feel unsafe, it's gonna trigger anxiety because that's not the behavior you're used to. But doing it in little small doses like that allows you to adjust to that and feel more comfortable. And so you doing it as a continuous practice will make it feel much easier down the line to implement this when you want to. Number two is frame it as purpose, not oversharing. And so there is kind of a line between being vulnerable and just dumping anything and everything on somebody else and, oversharing to them. Vulnerability is not just dumping everything on somebody else. Intentional openness. As Brené Brown also says, vulnerability is not oversharing. It's sharing with people who have earned the right to hear our story. And so it's allowing them to have that deeper connection with you by giving them a little bit more of who you are. Number three, and this goes more for people who are in a position of leadership or authority over other people, is be willing to show up imperfectly and be willing to model vulnerability for the people that look up to you. Taking steps like just owning your story, owning who you are, admitting when you've done something wrong and sharing it with the team, or admitting when you don't know the answer to something. Take purposeful steps to show up authentically instead of trying to show up perfectly, because people relate to you more when you're authentic. People don't relate to that kind of robotic perfection that we want to show up with. Number 4 is I want you to start reframing your thoughts around being vulnerable, because I think a lot of the times we get feelings of anxiety or shame or, what will people think of me? I'm going to be judged. They're going to talk about me behind my back about this thing that I'm sharing with them. People are going to think I'm dumb. Instead, I want you to reframe the dialogue of what is the cost of not sharing this? So let's say, for example, there's a group of people that you are really wanting to be friends with, and you feel as though you need to show up as someone that you're not in order to fit into this group. I want you to ask yourself, what is the cost of you not sharing your authentic self? What is the cost of you not speaking up in the way that you truly feel? Look at the consequences of that. Look at what those relationships are going to feel like and be like for you if you don't share who you truly are. Or let's say you've made a mistake at work that has some downstream consequences and you pretend it didn't happen. You pretend it doesn't exist and you just kind of sweep it under the rug. What are the consequences of your action? Many times when we reframe it this way, the cost of us not taking action is worse than the cost of us taking action, and that can help make it feel a little bit more comfortable for you to step forward and be vulnerable and be authentic. Number 5 is build environments of psychological safety around you. And so, along with you working on being more vulnerable to other people, create a space where other people feel safe being vulnerable around you. Encourage open dialogue, encourage people to share their feelings. When people make mistakes, treat it as a learning experience. Don't make people feel shameful and guilty because of the things they've done. Allow a space where other people being vulnerable is okay, and that in turn will open up the environment where you also being vulnerable is okay. Number 6 is I want you to reflect on situations where you are vulnerable. What happened? What did you do to open up yourself to somebody else? How did it feel? Did the connection deepen because of it? What surprised you about it? What felt uncomfortable about it? Any period of growth and you shifting your habits, it's going to feel a little bit uncomfortable. Taking the time to reflect and understand how you're feeling about the situation and why will better prepare you for the next time around that you try and implement it. And so my reflection for you right now, just listening to this segment of the episode, is I want you to close your eyes and I want you to reflect on a time maybe in the past week or so that you held back. Maybe you didn't speak up about something that you felt strongly about. Maybe you didn't admit to a mistake you made. Maybe you kept your mouth shut during a meeting when you actually had a really important question that you were too nervous to ask. What was it that kept you silent? What was it that made you not feel willing to open up? And what was the cost of you doing that? And along with that piece of reflection, I have a task for you this week. So I want you to take one opportunity in the next few days to be vulnerable in a way that you typically are not. We've gone over some examples earlier in the episode of really simple ways that you can implement this authenticity and vulnerability. So put it into practice one time in the next few days. With that, we are going to jump right into the second topic of this episode, which is managing conflict. So conflict is a big umbrella. This is something that can cover a whole array of different areas. And so I'll give you kind of broad strokes definition. Conflict, boiled down to its most general thing, is a process in which one party perceives that its interests are being opposed or negatively impacted by the other party. And so any situation where one person feels like their wants, needs, interests, whatever it is, are not being met by the other person in the relationship, or the other person is having some sort of negative impact on those things. Before we get into managing it, I'm going to get into a few different types of conflict, and so we can better break these apart and talk about different strategies based on which one we're talking about. And the first one is task conflict. And so task conflict is disagreement about work itself. What should be done, what needs to be done, how it should be done, and who should be doing what. This could be splitting up tasks for a work project. This could be trying to divide up, household chores. This could be trying to figure out who's going to pick up the kids after school. Any sort of task that requires multiple parties to kind of break apart who's managing what and how it's going to look. The next one is relationship conflict, and relationship conflict covers conflict that is rooted in interpersonal issues. Personality style differences, differences in attachment style, personality clashes, and emotional friction. So this can cover things within kind of the relationship dynamic, how the other person communicates with you, whether or not trust has been broken down. Differences in how you show up in this interpersonal relationship can create conflict between the people involved. The next one is value conflict, and this is conflict about deeply rooted beliefs. Your ethics, your identity, your values, things that are kind of at the core of your being, the main drivers that kind of encompass all of your actions and the way that you see the world. And this can be a really complex type of conflict, because when someone is in opposition to your deeply held values, in a way they are in opposition to your identity, and so it feels much deeper than some of these other types of conflicts. They're coming at the core of your being. And so these ones can trigger some really strong emotions and can require some really deep work to work through. The next one kind of goes hand in hand with task conflict, but this is process conflict. And some researchers will list this one separately, some will not, but it kind of encompasses how tasks are being done. What's the timeline of them being done? Who's accountable for what? And working through the actual process of what carrying out a certain task is going to look like. And the last one is status or power conflict. It's conflict around hierarchy roles, influence, and recognition. So that kind of who's in charge mentality. If there is not agreement on, hierarchy of roles or how power dynamics are split up, this can create a lot of conflict because people don't feel like they're being seen in the way that they want to be seen, and they don't feel like they're in a place in the relationship where they should be. So once you know the type of conflict, this makes it a little bit easier to tackle how to manage it, because not all conflict is the same, and the strategies for managing each of these things are going to be a little bit different. And when it comes to how we handle conflict right now, there are some strategies that we can take that can be helpful and some that can be harmful. And so I'm going to talk you through 5 strategies that you'll find in the Thomas Kilmann conflict model. This model breaks down 5 conflict management strategies, some positive, some not. The first one is competing. Competing is assertive and uncooperative, and it really entails you pursuing your own concerns at the expense of others. And so not taking anyone else's opinions, whatever, into consideration. This is just about you getting what you want. The next one is avoiding. This one, it's unassertive, it's uncooperative, it's delaying or withdrawing from the conflict and not really taking any productive steps to fix it. The next one is accommodating. This is unassertive but cooperative. This is kind of the process of you putting other people's wants and needs ahead of your own and accommodating what they want in order to resolve the conflict. The next one is compromising. This one's kind of moderately assertive and cooperative, and this is that process of seeking a middle ground where both people are happy with the outcome and both people can agree on what's going on. The last one is collaborating. And this one is both assertive and cooperative. And instead of compromising where it's about, both people not fully getting what they want in order to reach a common middle ground, collaborating is the process of implementing creative solutions so that both people fully get what they want out of the outcome. How can we match these approaches to conflict with the different types of conflict that I've broken down? And so we'll start with task conflict. Oftentimes the solution to this is some sort of collaboration or compromising. Encouraging open discussion, having both parties express their concerns about what is going on, and finding a common ground where both people can take on the tasks at hand in a way that they are comfortable with. Relationship conflict often involves addressing deeper interpersonal dynamics, and you can see a little bit of a mix of strategies in order to get to that end goal. And so you may see some accommodating. If there is one party in the relationship that has really hurt another, there may be some accommodating required in order to rebuild trust and create a relationship that is stable enough to move forward. You may see some collaborating in order to help rebuild that connection and create a relationship dynamic that works for the both of you. The one strategy that really does not work in this particular situation is avoiding and just withdrawing from the situation completely, because this can really just erode the relationship. There's no communication going on. So one of the first steps if you're dealing with this type of conflict is encouraging a really open dialogue. And this kind of goes back to that vulnerability conversation we just had of allowing yourself to show up authentically and allowing the other person to show up authentically without meeting them with judgment or shame, so that you can have this true back and forth and have that collaboration that you need in order to move forward. Value conflict can be a little bit of a deeper issue, and if you can, collaboration is good. Although sometimes this might be a situation where accommodating is a better solution. You may see a lot of situations like this where maybe you have a family member who has very different political or religious views than you, and this kind of hits on a deeper value and a deeper part of your identity. And so maybe the solution in those cases is to focus on conversation topics that don't include those things, because there is not going to be a middle ground. There is not going to be a true collaboration or compromise when you have very strongly opposing views. So maybe it requires a little bit of accommodation on both of your parts to have a relationship that doesn't sit on those main issues. Process conflict is going to require a lot of clarification and communication. compromising, collaborating in order to find a structure that works for both people. And this may require some accommodation early on while you kind of figure out the dynamic of how you want things to work. But in this particular situation, clarifying the roles is going to be the biggest thing. So clarifying who is doing what and finding a breakdown of that you both agree on and both can stick to long term. So I'm going to go over a few simple things that we can do for any type of conflict that is just going to help foster you getting to a solution and help foster an environment where both people can walk away happy. The first one is active listening, clarifying underlying interests. So like we talked about before, is encouraging that open dialogue, making a space where it's safe for people to share how they're feeling authentically. And sometimes this may require you to step back for a minute and gather your thoughts before you approach this conversation. Because I think sometimes what we do when we're in the height of conflict is we just want it to go away. We want those uncomfortable feelings to end, and so we jump into the conversation right away. Both people are still really emotional, and they're not coming from a place of really thinking through how they're going to articulate their feelings. They're coming from a place of emotion. And so sometimes the best thing to do is to take a step back, allow both parties to kind of gather their thoughts, and then come back and have a really open discussion about what is going on. Another important part of this is getting to the underlying reasons behind why you're feeling the way that you're feeling, why you want the things that you want. And so instead of just saying, I want this, get into a discussion about, I want this or I need this because here are the reasons why it matters to me. And along with having that open discussion, the second thing you can do that kind of goes hand in hand, like we've talked about, create psychological safety. Make it feel safe for the other person. When the other person is sharing their feelings with you, make a conscious effort to not let your emotions take over, because I think when people are coming at us in any sort of conflict and telling us their feelings, it can feel very easy to have our emotions take over, and we want to jump in and we want to defend ourselves and we want to argue. Force yourself to really listen to what they're saying, really take it in. Take a few minutes to digest it if you need to, and then try to just have an open conversation with them without the anger, without the judgment, without trying to win anything. The goal is not to win the argument. The goal is not to win the conflict. The goal is to find solutions that work for both of you. And if you are coming into it seeing it as a competition, you're not going to get the outcome that you want. You dominating and winning the entire thing is not the point. And it creates a situation where the other person doesn't feel that psychological safety. They don't feel okay opening up because you're not really listening. You're not really trying to find a common ground. You're just trying to win. The next two things that we can do in order to help make conflict easier to manage is early on clarifying roles. And if there is conflict going on, identify it early and have a conversation about it before it gets ahead of you. I think oftentimes, and I know I've done this, where at times in my life where I can sense some sort of conflict or some sort of tension bubbling up, I've gotten anxious about having a conversation about it, and so my inclination has been, let's just give it some time and maybe it'll just go away. Maybe the problem will just go away on its own and I don't have to have this uncomfortable conversation. But that's not the case. These things don't go away on their own. If anything, they get worse by you avoiding them. So if you've identified some sort of conflict, name it. Have the conversation, call it out early, because it's going to be a lot easier for you to find solutions in the beginning than after you've let it fester for weeks or months or years. And the last one, and this is a big one, when you are faced with any sort of conflict, make your focus the behavior or the issue, not the person's identity. Focus on what is wrong rather than blaming someone else for being wrong. The goal is not to come in and attack the person's identity and attack the person's character. The goal is for both of you to attack the problem. And I've heard some discussions about this before on ways that we can kind of facilitate this. And so sometimes when two people are in conflict, a strategy that I've heard being used is that they will give a separate name to the actual issue. They will give an identity to the actual issue. And so instead of two people coming at each other, it's two people collaborating for a third-party problem, and it allows for that kind of objective viewpoint where you're not trying to attack each other, you're not trying to come at each other, you are both working together in order to solve this, and that creates that environment of collaboration. I know conflict is kind of a very big topic, and think I'd be sitting here talking for a very long time if I tried to get into every nuance of it today. But that's just a quick breakdown of some simple things you can do to help manage conflict. And so I'll give you some kind of key takeaways from that, but instead of doing them right now, I'm going to include them in the final segment of this episode, which is your emotional fitness toolkit. This is your key takeaways from all of the episodes that we've done. We've had some topics that have popped up in multiple episodes of strategies that we can do. We've got some really important takeaways that I think are kind of the keys to hold on to. If you didn't listen to the entire episode, these are the things that I think are the most important to convey. And so, as the last part of this episode, I am going to be going through just a quick rundown of some of the heavy hitters from this episode that you can take away as your little mental well-being toolkit. So the first part of this toolkit comes from episode 1 of the Emotional Fitness series, and this is going over Dr. Emily Anhalt's 7 traits of emotional fitness. So key areas that you can focus on in order to improve your emotional fitness overall. And if you go back to episode 1, you will find a deeper breakdown on what emotional fitness really is and how these 7 traits contribute to it. But the 7 traits of emotional fitness are self-awareness, empathy, mindfulness, curiosity, play or playfulness, resilience, and communication. The next tool that I want you to add into your toolkit is thinking of your thoughts as passing clouds. Now, you can use different visuals for this. I like to use the visual of your mind kind of being the sky and each thought being like a passing cloud. I've heard some people refer to it as a river and each thought is kind of a fish swimming through the river. However you want to visualize it. Think of your thoughts of things that are just kind of passing through. You don't have to attach your identity to them. You don't have to attach some deeper meaning to all of them. Some thoughts can just pop up and go away, and that's okay. We're gonna have good thoughts, we're gonna have bad thoughts. We don't always have control over everything that pops up in our head. The next one is giving yourself advice as if you're talking to someone else. Like I talked about in one of the previous episodes, we have a much easier time giving advice to somebody else than we do taking advice. And so when we're trying to talk in our own heads through any sort of situation, give yourself advice as if you were giving the advice to somebody else, because it creates a situation where you are able to be much more objective, and you'll probably end up thinking through much better advice because you're coming from the mindset of helping somebody else as opposed to bossing yourself around. The next one is I want you to reflect on emotional patterns and be willing to name your feelings. If you are constantly acting out in a certain way in similar situations, I want you to take some time to reflect on why and try and dig into the deeper trigger of what is causing that behavior. What did you learn earlier on in life? What experiences have you had that are contributing to these patterns of behavior? And then be willing to put names to your feelings. I talked in a previous episode about some resources where you can find breakdowns of different names of feelings. And I know this kind of sounds a little elementary, but there are a lot more different types of emotions that we are capable of feeling than we may realize. Actually finding the correct verbiage to put to it can make it a little bit easier for you to understand what is going on and tackle it in a productive way. The next one is Dr. Lucy Hone's 3 Strategies of Resilient People. In a previous episode, I talked a little bit more about Dr. Lucy Hone's research and her experience with building resilience and going through her own grieving process. And she broke down 3 main strategies that she used in her own experience, and that ended up being kind of the 3 key takeaways that she implemented with other people. Number 1 is that resilient people get that shit happens. Number 2 was that resilient people are very good about selectively choosing where they place their attention. And number 3 was asking yourself this question: is what I am doing helping me or harming me? And implementing this into different situations as a kind of way to give yourself a moment of pause to reflect on what you're doing and whether or not it's benefiting you or hurting you. And then course correcting if you need to based on the answer. Number 5 is implementing small moments of stress. So implementing small things that create a little bit of stress in our brain, that trigger a little bit of that stress response so that we have a chance to acclimate to it and get a little bit better at taking those moments of stress on. And so we talked about some examples in a previous episode about what this can include. So things like cold exposure, things like exercise, things like taking a break from your phone, things that are smaller doses of stress that are not going to be detrimental to your day, but that allow you to kind of practice taking it on. Number 6, in order to improve your confidence, focus on having a growth mindset and keep the promises that you made to yourself. Having that consistent follow through on the things that you say you're going to do, and having a mindset that you are able to continuously grow, that your abilities and your attributes are not fixed things, can greatly improve your confidence in the long run. The next one, and this kind of goes hand in hand with implementing small moments of stress, but implement small moments of discomfort and implement intentional pauses throughout your day in order to improve patience and that kind of mental endurance. So implementing kind of a 30-second pause before you pick up your phone, or if you're wanting to grab a snack from the fridge, set a 5-minute timer and force yourself to wait until it runs out to go and get the thing that you're wanting to do. Implementing those small moments of having to pause before getting the thing that you want creates just a little bit of discomfort and creates a situation where you can get more acclimated to having to be patient and having to feel these uncomfortable feelings without immediately needing to remedy it. The next one is adapt a both and mindset. And so this ended up being kind of a strategy for multiple topics during this series, but having a mindset that two things can be true at once. Maybe you made a mistake at something and you're capable of learning and growing from it. This kind of goes hand in hand with having a growth mindset that outcomes are not fixed. Your abilities are not fixed. You can be in a certain place and have the ability to move forward. Number 9, practice vulnerability without oversharing. Don't just word vomit on other people, don't just dump everything that's in your head, but intentionally add little moments of vulnerability. Next one, admit when you are unsure of something and be willing to learn. This goes hand in hand with vulnerability. Be willing to admit when you don't know. And the last one, which is kind of the key takeaway I want you to take from our final segment in this series, was when you are faced with conflict, focus on the behavior and the issue, not the person. Okay? So those are kind of my main takeaways, that if you didn't listen to anything of this series and I had to give you just a few things for you to implement into your day-to-day, those are the ones I'd recommend. Those are the ones that I feel like are maybe the biggest heavy hitters from this series. Thank you for listening to this episode, and if you listened to the other ones, thank you for listening to this whole series. This was a project that covered a whole lot of topics. It was a whole lot of different things, but we tried something different. Maybe you guys liked it, maybe you didn't. Let me know in the comments. I will maybe do another series like this in the future, but if there's specific things you want me to focus on if I do, let me know. I would love to try out some different projects in the way that I bring this podcast to you. Next week, we'll be back to our regularly scheduled programming. We will be covering one topic in the episode, not many, as we've been doing the last couple of weeks. So thank you for tuning in, and I will catch you next week.
Hey, thanks for listening to the show. If you like the episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a review, or share the show with a friend. Your support helps this show reach even more incredible people just like you. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll catch you next time at the Mindset Gym.